University of Indianapolis. And so without further ado, Fred, please take over.
Thank you very much. Well, good day, everybody. My name is Fred Reese, and I chair this relatively new Department of Music and Arts Technology program at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. I don't know how many of you are familiar with our university, but we are a campus. We're one of the 7 campuses associated with Indiana University, and on our campus and a couple of others, we share degree programs and schools between Purdue University and Indiana University. One of the unusual aspects of our campus and our programs here are that we can often combine disciplines for purposes of teaching and learning and research, and for us, creative activities. So we're an Indiana University academic unit, but we're housed within the Purdue School of Engineering and Technology. So we sort of have the best of both worlds for what we do here. Our primary foci is music technology and music therapy. We have a Master of Science in Music Technology program that went online in about 1998 here, and also now the Master of Science in Music Therapy program, which again also went online when it began in 2005. The focus, however, of this presentation is really to look at the pedagogical side of music teaching in the classroom setting. And while I'll be referring to the discipline issues as a matter of example, my interest is really to share with you both the context of what's available and some of the outcomes that have proved to be enduring over the length of time that I've been involved with distance learning. To begin with, I would like to set the stage by saying that I'm going to talk about 2 different institutions and the types of resources that they have available for distance learning for teaching music classes. One is the University of Northern Iowa, which in 1993 took advantage of what was then a new statewide interactive television network. It was a full screen, full motion system transmitting at about 45 megabits per second. So the video quality was good. And at that time, there were over 300 classrooms, either in schools or in other places, government offices, libraries, and so on, around the state. Now they're up to 700 and something, which is rather amazing for a state with 2.9 million people. And all the classrooms are the same, so you can virtually go from one classroom in one site to another, and you could arrange to link as many sites as feasible for you to teach. So you could have people literally from all those other sites coming in to join you. I'm going to flip over here and start the actual presentation and show you some slides about that, leading up to some of the outcomes that are still valid today, both from the Iowa perspective and from the Indiana perspective. I mentioned the Iowa Communications Network and the kind of system that they have set up. They have a state switching hub which schedules all classes for whatever discipline or subject or program that anyone wishes to put onto the system. It's not only used, of course, for classroom teaching, but government services. I've even seen them do parole interviews between judges and inmates at prisons, and other interesting and unexpected uses of this kind of system. It's very much vibrant today and continues to grow. Just to give you a little idea here, and this is one of the maps that shows the different types of institutions. Kirkwood Community College, for example. Yes?
Fred, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. I think everyone that is seeing a blank screen instead of the map that you're discussing. I can see that you're
Okay.
you're sending content, but the content isn't coming through.
Okay, if you can bear with me a minute, I will try to see what I can have done with this.
Oh, thank you. I'm hearing that at least one site is seeing the content,
Okay.
but several sites are not, including Peabody and Manhattan School of Music. Yeah, at least 4 sites are not, and 1 site is. So this may be on our end.
Okay, I'm just gonna go get my tech person who I sent off thinking everything was fine, and we'll check it at this end.
Okay, we're checking it on the bridge. I do apologize for the interruption.
I've got my tech person back here in case there's anything that we need to be doing from this end.
Okay. We are seeing you loud and clear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm now getting from our technical person, send again, and it should be fine.
Is everyone seeing this slide right now?
I am not. Is everyone seeing the slide? No, I'm seeing no. Try again. I can see we're trying to receive content. Yes, I'm getting from at least, I'm saying from some sites can see it, some cannot. RCM, Peabody, Manhattan School are not seeing it. Newcastle and Cleveland Institute are seeing it. Bruce, maybe we should just continue? I do
Okay.
apologize. Yeah, we'll just continue. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. And that's too bad too. Okay, I have a slide up here with a million little blue-colored balloons, and the main thing I want to demonstrate here, of course, Iowa is in the center of the country, is the range of types of services and connecting points that are involved. High schools, I'm looking here, colleges, laboratory, medical examiner's lab, Anamosa State Penitentiary, and so on. Here's another view which is not as cluttered, and these are endpoints for the various video sites mapped across the state, keeping in mind that in Iowa, a lot of people live in small towns that are 10 to 15 miles apart. And so getting access, say, to universities and colleges in the larger cities is not necessarily an option for them. For those of you who can see the slide, there's a sort of beige arrow, and it's pointing to a place called Cedar Falls, Waterloo, and that's where the University of Northern Iowa is. This is one of the typical classrooms that you would see, and there's a platform that's right in the front under the instructor view of the classroom, and there's an overhead camera there, and there's 3 other cameras to catch different angles from the room. This particular system uses a voice-activated microphone system, so almost like walkie-talkie. So you press a lever, and what that does is that brings up that person from the other site to the home site, okay, where the instructor is, and you can see and hear that person or people at that particular site. I taught this class, this course, which is the Master of Music and Music Education program, quite similar to music education master's programs across the U.S. And as I said, we started in 1993, and at one point when I was still there, I think the summer of 1999, I had 30 students at 10 sites who I was interacting with and teaching classes. And at that point, it was getting a bit of a struggle to try to cope with everybody. I just got off the phone yesterday with the current director of the School of Music at the University of Northern Iowa, and he tells me after all these years, remember this started in 93, they're still averaging 15 to 20 students per year, okay, with a handful on campus. The university is off an interstate spur and not near any of the other major schools, and also the minute you leave the edge of the town, you're in the country. And so most of the people who want to get access to the expertise from you and I have to go through the ITV system in order to be able to get the access to the expertise they want. Being a music ed program, a lot of these people are working teachers in the schools, and so they have to take their classes in the evening. But with this system, some of them literally walk down the halls of their high schools to a classroom where they can take in the coursework. But I put up here some of the outcomes that are still being sustained as a result of this kind of teaching and using these kinds of resources. And by the way, you could push audio and video, whatever on computer, and in any particular form or fashion, either analog or digital. Of course, in 1993, it was all analog and no internet, but today, of course, all those resources are available. Without question, even today, one of the main responses from participants in this kind of mode is, of course, the overcoming the tyranny of distance and living in rural areas where this expertise and the opportunity to do advanced degree work is just not there. But one of the unexpected outcomes, and this started fairly early on, and it makes sense, is that we began to see what we called a cohort effect. In other words, the people out there started communicating with each other, not only during class, but after class. So they were extending, if you will, the knowledge and the information from the actual session, the scheduled session. They were extending that throughout the week and building strong relationships with each other. Now, that particular degree program, which was 12 courses, did require 2 summer residencies of 4 courses that were only available on the campus. And so, of course, when they would come together for that, you could see the camaraderie and you could see the shared experiences. And we're keeping in mind this is long before Facebook or anything like that. So it was an unintended but pleasant outcome that was pervasive almost from the first year that the program was started and is still the case today. So that was a nice thing to see. The dialogue, as I mentioned, would continue past the classes, and of course you had students both on campus in front of me as the instructor, as well as all the people out there. The students that were off campus did as well academically as those on campus. Everybody had to meet the same requirements for courses and degree work, including tests or whatever else that may have been part of the classwork. So this was common. All right. Students off campus, let's see. The other thing I guess I would mention here, as I say, the evolution from initially the talking head and the overhead projector and maybe a CD being played in a CD player evolved to the point where, of course, whatever came over the internet would be displayed or seen or heard. The only disadvantage, which has since been overcome as we've gone more and more to digital video, was that if you showed anything, say, from the computer over the system, that was again back in the 90s, you were going between NTSC to RGB signal. And so a lot of the images from the computer were blurred. Wherever possible, therefore, if we'd had PowerPoints or anything like that, we tried to send the PowerPoint files ahead of time so that people could read them. But again, that problem has been overcome over the years. Here at IUPUI, we've been using a product which I suspect many of your larger institutions have access to. And when we first started in 1999, we used a homegrown product called ClassCast, which was essentially a shell. It ran real video in real time, okay, showing the instructor, and then you had a place to put up your Word or PowerPoint presentation and a chat room. But it was fairly crude and slow. At that time in 99, a student who would run chat, okay, from wherever, it would take 10 seconds for the system to be able to pull that up. So it was not the best system in terms of immediate response or questions being asked and so on. It continued to evolve and improve, but then we were able to start using this product, and I don't know, again, how many of you have used it, called Adobe Connect. But it's a server-based system that usually resides in a central place on campus, and virtually any faculty member can get an account and start teaching with it. When you use it, of course, you save your you can save your video streams, and we do that. We video archive every class. All right. Also, well, I'll come to the other utility we use as well. But what's nice about this is we'll video record all the proceedings, and they're available 24/7 to everybody. Once you're in the system, you're going to come up and see something that looks like this. I teach a multimedia course, production course, and these are what they call pods, which you can move around on your screen. So there's yours truly in one area, and there's a chat room. When people are on, you'll see the names of students as well who are participating in here. There are limited testing functions and survey functions on here as well. You can put in other web links. But where this kind of thing becomes useful is how interactive it can be and how you can take advantage of online resources. So, for example, I'm talking about something. I want to show some internet-based sources. These links are live, okay? And so the students are seeing them. They can go in and mess around with them on their own if they wish, or they can follow the proceedings as I'm taking us through the class content. But if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see the chat room. And here in the chat, as we're going forward, people are coming up with things. For instance, we're talking about published sources, and suddenly one person comes up with a new link. And so what's happening here is that in real time, even though our students in class and our students out there are taking in whatever I have planned for them, okay, they're also setting up a separate dialogue and discussing things and sharing and adding to the class proceedings. And I'm very impressed by that. I was at a conference in Chicago about 3 years ago. One of my other colleagues, David Peters, was teaching a class online. And I decided I'm going to jump in and see what's going on, which was kind of mean, okay, because I didn't ask his permission. But I did. I jumped in, and of course I got to this point, and I was looking at the running commentary as he was doing his presentation. And I was fascinated because, of course, these are master's students, in this case in music technology, so they're mature and focused. But they were engaged in very lively discussion on terminology, on other sources. Somebody didn't understand what the instructor was talking about, and somebody else went in and wrote in an explanation, and so on. And it was nice to the extent that it was not intrusive, didn't stop the proceedings for the instructor, but it did help complement and answer questions for people who didn't have access to this knowledge base. So, and this is just another sample. In this case, we're looking on online academic publications. And as I said, this is a live site, so I could just click on this and open it up and everybody would see what I was doing. There's also a multi-point video conferencing function, and so for those students who wanted to actually be seen and talk instead of using the chat room, they could so do, and you can see a list of participants up in the left-hand corner. Now, another feature of this particular product is that you can turn over control of your desktop as an instructor to students, or the students can turn over control of their desktops to you, which means what they're displaying is now not only seen by you, but everybody else in the class. Okay? And so in this particular case, and I can determine it by virtue, you probably cannot see it very clearly, but there's a little icon with a person and an arrow, and that is in fact the student's cursor at his or her site while presenting on this particular genius called Seymour Papert and some of his work that was done using technology for teaching math. This is one of our students in class doing his presentation and pushing this out over the internet. We also use a Crestron unit which connects audio, video, computer, and so on, so that whatever we want to push out over the internet, we can do just with the press of a button. Okay, another student talking about a proposal for a project. See, and just right now, you may not be able to read it, but somebody asked here, does anyone know the name of the folder we need to load our presentations? Okay, so they're asking a question, okay, to which they're getting an answer, okay, the Snap server, and I'm able to proceed, or the student's able to proceed with their presentation without interruption. And again, just another example of being able to put up information and then bringing up sites during the proceedings. Now we use another product, which is an IU product called iStream, and it's a slightly higher quality video, without question. The video is still pretty crude within Connect Pro. So we're actually running a separate feed, and this is also being video recorded, and after it has been recorded, students can go back in, which is what you're looking at here, using Flash Player to view proceedings. Usually what they will see will be things like this, okay? The room's dark right now, and this is actually Connect Pro being shown on the screen up front, although our students in class probably have it open on their desktops as well. That's from the back camera, and the reason it's so dark there is because we're also displaying PowerPoint presentations and so on. The front camera, however, which is, and this is a Polycom system, you know, can pan and zoom, and we can pre-program different set points for focus, and these are some of the students on campus at that time, and they're looking at things on the screen. There's yours truly up front, and I would say another important feature here, because I heard this comment made earlier about having tech support. When I'm doing a class, I boot everything up. I do my teaching. I push the buttons. I don't need a tech person. The same was the case in the Iowa situation. We did not need to have a tech person unless there was literally a technical problem. Another product we use, and some of you probably use Blackboard, is OnCourse. This was originally developed as a course management system here at IU before it became Sakai. And this is just an example of the courses that I've been teaching. They usually keep this for 2 years, and some of the screens that you see here that are part of that. So you have within this places for announcements, student grades, tests, forum, chat room, its own email system, pretty much anything like that if you've used this kind of system before for your own teaching. So, and this is just to give you a quick template of what it looks like and what you have access to and what the students have access to. So, what are the outcomes here? Again, we have this cohort effect. that's going on, and in many cases it's even more important here because the Master of Science in Music Technology program is done entirely online. The students are not required to come to campus at any time during the course of their studies, but they do of course have to satisfy the same requirements that we have on campus for our on-campus people. Again, this sort of second class within the class idea through the chat room is interesting. And I've asked some of the students why they did not want to do the video conferencing side of Connect Pro. And many of them say, look, I'm home. I'm sitting in my bed, and taking class and following proceedings. I don't necessarily want to have somebody look at my curlers and my cup of tea in my hand, okay? And so that's understandable. And so they don't need to be seen. They can, by the way, also go in by voice, so they don't have to have a camera. They can, if they have a built-in mic or access to a mic, they can talk to the class, and everybody can hear them. Okay. Because of the nature of the Master of Science in Music Technology program, not all of our students come to us with undergraduate degrees in music, but they do have to have formal music training. And there's an exciting part to this, which is a different issue than many of you are probably concerned with, and that is they will come with these other backgrounds. And so you have an audio engineer, you have a person who does studio recording, somebody who does film and film music production, music for games, music business, and so on, and they will be joined in with music educators. Okay, because naturally a fair size of our population are band directors and choir directors and general music people, and all of a sudden the expertise base of the class explodes. And so somebody will come up with a problem, a recording problem they have, or they want to do some kind of work with a music workstation, and somebody who has that experience will chime right in class or do a follow-up after class and give them the information they need. So that's kind of an exciting thing to have, that kind of interdisciplinary class involvement instead of everybody pursuing the same agenda and having the same backgrounds. And I mentioned here that of 167 graduates since 1999, 49 did not possess undergraduate degrees. Interestingly, some of them produced the best technical and creative final projects of all the students because they had some technical background or brought other interdisciplinary capabilities that made their work stand out. That isn't to say that the people with music backgrounds were not very good, but it was an interesting sidelight or side effect that I would not have expected. So, so in a nutshell, that those are the issues that I guess I would raise from the standpoint of pedagogy. The last thing I'm going to mention here to bring us back, since most of the presentations seem to be oriented towards performance, which is understandable that we are performing art. We also do performance, and we're part of Internet 2. And in our building, literally across the way, is the global NOC for Internet 2, which means that all of you who are connected with that are being the control center is literally in this building about 100 feet away from me. So it's the national switching hub for I2. I put up this picture here, which is an example of some of our students and faculty who are doing live interactive Internet 2 based performances, which they're doing with people in other sites in other countries that also have similar high bandwidth networks. And there's about 40 or 50 countries like that. And if you are seeing the screen, you'll see in the background this floor-to-ceiling screen, which is showing the people from the different sites doing various things in rehearsal and performance. This is part of a rehearsal going on, and the gentleman who's sitting on the far left is Scott Deal. Yesterday, he was awarded the innovative driving what's called the innovative driving something award. I forget what the IDEA award. I'm sure Christiane probably can recall what the full name of it is, which is awarded to several people each year for doing innovative work. In his case, it was an I2 based a commission with Matthew Bertner from University of Virginia of an opera that was written specifically for transmission over the internet, as opposed to, say, taking Bizet's Carmen, from the Met and just putting it on the internet as a full performance. This work could not be generated without being transmitted over the internet. And so there are certain features about it that work in that particular way. It was called Auxilog, which is based upon concerns about the environment in Alaska, and involved several sites, I think in Europe, Canada, and also in the US for the actual performance. So that's in a nutshell both who we are and the kinds of concerns that we have, and I certainly have, in terms of teaching using the internet. I'm open now for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Fred. That was an absolutely illuminating discussion. I'm so sorry that there were technical issues. I have been assured that all of the data that you sent was recorded and will be available for us to look at online. And I've seen just in the chat while you were talking that there's a lot of interest in looking at the data you sent from the people who could not see it at the time. I know that George has asked a question during your presentation. I'm wondering if maybe he wants to repeat it now and get your full thoughts on that. George, we are not getting audio from you yet. Still no audio. We'll move on. Oh, wait, there you go.
Got me?
Go ahead.
It's on here. Okay. Hi. Yeah. I was wondering just how much of the online music tech degree you have is in real time?
All of it.
All of it. Okay. And then has that been true since the beginning of the program, or has that been a recent change?
No, that's been the case since 1999. Although we've migrated, as I said, from a relatively crude platform to the one that's readily available certainly at major universities.
Thanks.
Excellent. And I know Christian Orto also has a question for you. Christian. I'm afraid your audio also is off.
My audio is off.
Now it is on. Okay.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was muted at the bridge. Here I am. Hi, Fred. It's nice
Hello.
to see you.
Again.
Long time no see. Fred and I were just at the World Music Forum in Estonia a few days ago, so it's nice to see you in cyberspace. Just to follow up to George Hess's question, which is, I find it absolutely fascinating that the entire course is in real time, because you hear so much conversation and discussion about how in the online world, there's so much asynchronous courseware out there, and that there's this great desire for lifelong learners, adult learners, working learners to have the flexibility of learning on demand, learning when they can or when they want to. So tell me, how is it that you are able to convene everyone at the same time every week? And is this a challenge for you? Is this a request that comes up from the students enrolled in the program?
Well, I'll put it this way. We have 90 students right now in the Master of Science in Music Technology program, which has grown from about 8 or 9 in 1999, and they're all over the place. People, most of the students want to have some simulation of live interaction. Okay, by the way, there are cases, because we also have students in Europe and in Asia, and those people are not going to get on at 3 a.m. for live classes, so they use the video archive. So in that sense, they're doing this asynchronously. But anybody within a reasonable 5-hour time zone of us can participate usually in our classes. I shouldn't say 5-hour, that's not true, that would put you late. But 12 hours, certainly Asia could participate. Our classes run at night from 6 to 8:40, and that seems to work out pretty well for most of the students. And they prefer that. And philosophically, I've always felt that it's important to have, if we're going to do this, as much live interaction as possible.
That's fascinating. So tell me, for the East Asian students that are not going to be in real time, they are then watching the recorded class that took place, and then
Hmm.
is all their interaction with you then asynchronously? They're
It, it's either asynchronous or we do video conference, okay, during the time, because I can talk to them at 8 o'clock in the morning, okay, from
right.
home. Okay, so in other words, we can do real-time follow-up.
And do you find that the faculty are open to that? Because obviously that's more of your time, and it's in addition to your classroom teaching hours. It's impinging, you're fine doing it at home, but do you think that's an institutional or faculty issue, that we're asking more of our faculty in terms of being available at other times to accommodate these learners in other time zones?
Well, I can tell you, and part of it's because of who we are. All of our faculty teach online, and so and whether it's music therapy or music technology, they're using these resources. So I don't have to convince them. Okay, they realize it goes with the territory of
Right.
being in our program.
That's very interesting, because I would imagine there could be some discussion about, well, I'm, putting more hours in and therefore want to be paid for this additional time, um, for that kind of extended office hours, if you will.
Well, but very often graduate programs, and I know this when I was at NYU and so on, will have evening classes because a lot of your people are working people. So, so we may not teach during the day, okay, or we may not teach every day during the day. So the workload is pretty well balanced out.
Well, that's super, Fred. I really thank you for your response, and you clearly have a groundbreaking model. And I would look forward to other schools now taking on something similar.
Can I just mention something to those of you who were talking earlier about the problem of limited camera angles for instruction? And I think, Christian, you can certainly footnote this, because we were in Tampere, okay, and the piano lab that Matti Rupo has, which uses 4 cameras with 4 different camera angles that the student sees as well as the instructor, and of course off-site. There's a very similar thing at the University of Ottawa with Gilles Como and his piano lab. Very similar setup. It's not cheap, but it is a way to get around that problem of what's the best angle to be able to see what's going on in performance. So I don't mind advertising that, and if you want to say something about it, that's fine too.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, and I think that it's, again, getting back to Michael Tilson-Thomas's point of what does the individual learner or teacher want technologically, and we have other faculty, for instance, Pinka Zuckerman, who require or ask for very little camera information. He simply wants a wide shot of the student, and it simply gets enough visual and oral information from that scenario so that he's able to teach on a very high level. So again, I think it's very individual as to, pedagogically, what environment, what kinds of tools do you want in order to effectively teach? So I appreciated Maestro Tilson Thomas's comments about that there's a certain individuality to these various tools. But it's exciting as well to see the work of Tampere and Ottawa U and this kind of new world of expanding multiple perspectives through multiple camera angles.
If I could jump in with one last question for Fred that might then segue into the open forum, and I think we have few enough participants now that we can just make the open forum open and people can just jump in, no need to go through the chat room. But Fred, it's fascinating for me to hear your perspective as someone who's been doing this from the very beginning of the, going from chats all the way through to today's technology. I'm just wondering, do you feel we've reached a point now where it's absolutely satisfying as an instructor to have these distance interactions with students rather than sitting in a classroom or sitting in a room with the student?
Well, of course, keeping in mind that we do have the students in our classrooms, okay? Although I have occasionally had a class where I had nobody on campus and everybody was off campus. But you do have live bodies in the classroom as well as whoever's connecting from out there. And that philosophically I think is important. I can't speak for other people. Of course, I've been spoiled at institutions that supported this kind of resources, including the IT departments, and I've also worked with colleagues who've been willing to work this way, including, by the way, people in music theory. I won't say music history, which always amazes me because that's such an area where this kind of technology should be easy. We've certainly seen great improvement in the quality of sound, over the internet, which is important, obviously, and video with H.323 and beyond. So, but I can't speak for people who have not done this before. I'm sure, like was said early on, there are still a Luddite musician or music instructor, and we've been way behind the curve compared to other disciplines in getting involved with these technologies.
Excellent, thank you. So I'd like to now open things up to everyone. We have about 7 minutes before closing time with Internet 2, and I think we wanted this time to be an open forum, and there are few enough of us here that I think we can make this forum absolutely as open. So if anyone has thoughts on the day or further questions for Fred, please jump in.
I would love to jump in and hear from those. For instance, I've seen we have a participant from Newcastle. Perhaps he's still with us. He's probably some ungodly hour there. I don't know if he has a microphone. But I am very, very interested in what the attendee experience was this morning. Of course, when you're on the production side of doing a virtual conference, and this is our first one as a team, it has a lot of challenges, and we're dealing with all of the challenges constantly. But I'm very interested to hear what your perception is of this virtual conference, and if you have found that we have been able to convey the ideas of our various presenters. So I turn it over to the gentleman at Newcastle, if he would please chime in, and anyone else, of course.
Can you hear me? I've turned my mic on. Terrific.
We hear you.
I'm Nathan. Hello, Christiane. I'm Nathan Scott from the University of Newcastle, Newcastle, Australia, not Newcastle upon Tyne. So I'm not far away from where Jeremy is. He's probably an hour or so over the water in New Zealand. So we're about the same time zone as Jeremy. So it's coming up to 3 a.m. here at the moment. So it's almost there. It's been fantastic today. Obviously, we operate online music technology programs, coursework based for about the last 10 years. Ours are online distance ed, so your presentation, by the way, was fantastic. That was very interesting. But also we've been venturing into the video conferencing side over the last few years, and certainly we've been associated with Lynette at Polycom. We've had a lot of connections with the video conferencing systems at ANU as well. So fantastic. This is great to hear other parties from around the world, particularly Singapore as well, and the United States, to actually hear how everyone's approaching this from a different aspect. Here at Newcastle, we have our own flavour, if you like, that we're approaching a lot of these technologies with. We've been using Jack Trip, for example, for connections with Ken Fields in Calgary. Certainly we've been using video conferencing for double bass lessons to our Sydney campus. So certainly it's lovely to see that everyone's been touching on little areas that we've been examining ourselves over the last few years. So I certainly look forward to tomorrow night as well. We'll be here. Unfortunately, our head of school had to leave because he has an appointment early this morning, but Professor Richard Vella was here as well for most of tonight's session. So thanks very much. Technically, it worked wonderfully at this end. We haven't had any dropouts, and I can see most of the presentations. So you'll be pleased to know we've actually had a fantastic operation at this end, very seamless.
Thank you. I know Tanya has some special guests with her in London as well.
Thank you, David. Yes, I've got my colleagues from Adobe Music and Queen Mary University of London, and they've been with us for the whole afternoon over here and have some reflections on the day. I know they've been doing a lot of work as well, using Polycom for music exchange, and I'll let them tell a bit more, but I understand that they've got some comments on the afternoon or morning.
Hi, I'm Sam Duffy from Queen Mary University of London, and this is Bill Lloyd from Adobe Music, who's the director of the Britain Pairs programme there. One of the threads that I've really liked seeing coming through this afternoon is that the focus of the conference right up front was billed as being pedagogical and not technical. And one of the things that we're really looking at, and in particular I'm looking at in my research, is actually the interaction. And I really liked what Thomas was saying about how it's actually got to be about the technology supporting the musicians, and we've got to understand what actually happens in teaching to make this tool really work for us. And in particular, I'd really like to see this technology working to support a long-term one-to-one relationship, which means you have to understand the interactions first. Especially tying together what Eastman said around, we've almost got to the point where, apart from the latency, which I think is always going to be an issue for some time yet, it's almost ubiquitous. We can almost rely on the technology working. So now what we need to get to is, how do we make it work? When we saw the oboe demonstration, that conversation about, is head and shoulders better? Is it physicality? How much face-to-face interaction actually even happens in a normal music lesson? I'm very interested in all of that to help draw together the best way of interacting through the tool that we have. And I think everybody has a lot of work to do on that still before we actually need more technological solutions in some way. I almost think we have enough technology already, and it's that so what? It's the next stage. And I don't know if, Bill, you want to add to that.
Yes, I suppose this is the Holy Grail for us. We're a remote institution. We don't have a resident staff. We bring extremely high-powered people to teach and give masterclasses all around.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Could you hold the microphone closer?
How about that? Can you hear me?
Much, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Very briefly, we run a lot of masterclasses at Aldeburgh, but I noticed Fred used this rather eloquent phrase, the tyranny of distance, and we are victims of that. We're a long way from London. We're a long way from anywhere. We don't really want to be flying people around, so it's got real benefits to us having some sort of distance learning opportunities. Not just at the masterclass level, which I think, as we've seen all day, is probably getting close to being really useful, but also actually one-to-one, week in, week out teaching. And it's this that Sam and I are exploring, is whether we can actually explore perhaps the opportunities for students at pre-undergraduate level, and how much it actually is possible to use this technology for at that level, and how much we need to actually ensure that the pupil and teacher meet, and how often. So this is areas which we're exploring now. Multi-camera, interactive controls for the teacher, all these things are under exploration now in a project being funded by British Telecom. So we'll report back when we have information for you.
There is actually as well, I have a web presentation in the multimedia section which actually reports on some initial findings from my work. If anybody has any more questions on that, please do get in touch. My email is actually on the presentation.
Great, thank you much. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to have you here. And also, I see we have online a question for Fred from one of our auditors who was watching your presentation in North Carolina. Who's wondering if you do any one-on-one instrumental or voice lessons, or are your SDL experiences only in these two majors you were talking about?
Well, we certainly have that capacity. We do have guitar lessons that we give, both class and individual, that have been done online. But because even though our students as majors have to do private study and participate in ensembles, the bachelor's program is at this point just an on-campus program. Okay, it's not online, and so our master's students are not required to study instruments, because that's not the focus of the degree program here. So that's not happened here. But I know in Iowa they do distance learning over their system to campuses and people who can get access to ICN rooms, for instrumental instruction. I would like to quickly throw something in here to my Australian counterparts. My first academic post was as a lecturer in music at the University of Queensland in 1978, and I'm familiar with the Newcastle program, and I stay in touch with my colleagues in Australia. So it's a pleasure to see you folks.
Thank you very much. Well, we are at 12 noon now, in 12 noon Eastern time in the United States. I believe this would be 4 Greenwich Mean Time. And so thank everyone for participating today. For me, it was absolutely illuminating and fascinating, and I cannot wait until tomorrow to learn more and to hear more presentations. So thank you very much, and I hope those of you for whom it's 2 in the morning or later even, get a good night's sleep, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.